Alright, in this episode, we're going to be going over how to create enemies that move along a certain path, and I'll show you guys a quick demo of what's going to happen. So, I forgot exactly where they spawn in. Yeah, so they'll follow a designated path, and once they reach the end, they'll delete it themselves. Yeah, it's fairly simple. And if you wanted a recap of what we did last episode, we created a player and this simple floor. Okay, anyways, let's go straight into it. And by the way, I create everything beforehand, so it's like a faster video for time's sake. Anyways, the first thing you want in your scene, in your map 1, is you want a path 3D. And this is a node, and you're gonna want to use these buttons at the top. You can use this green button to add a point, and you want to create a path. You can also use like the properties to change the positions if you want them to be like exactly straight or something. You could add like tilt onto them too. There's a bunch of things, but I just kept mine fairly simple. You want it to go across the map, have a start and end, and then let's go over how to make the enemy. So the first step is create a new scene, and you want the root node to be a path follow 3D. Okay, and then you want to add a mesh instance and a normal node. In the mesh instance, for me, I used a sphere mesh and I changed the radius and height. Yeah, I think I times it by 4. You also want to move the mesh up by your height, because otherwise it will be halfway like underground basically. So in my case, I moved it up by 2 on the y-axis. And let me just quickly explain what this node does. As you can probably tell by the name, it allows a node to manipulate its transform to follow a path, which in our case will be our path 3D. However, you may notice this little warning. It says path follow 3D only works when it's set as a child of the path 3D node. So when we create a new enemy, we're gonna have to set it as a child of the path 3D. Other than that, there's not really any other limitations. So let's just go straight into it. I probably said that like 5 times already, but anyways, you want to right click on your normal node, press save branch as scene. In the scene, you want to add a script. For me, I created a new folder called components, and I added the path follow component to that folder. You can name this whatever you want, but for the script, we have 2 export variables. Again, these are variables that can be changed within the editor. So you can see where my cursor is right now. I can change this to 12, but I'm going to keep it at 10 for default. And we're going to use the inbuilt function called process delta. You can control click on it to read more about it. But yeah, it's basically every frame. And delta is the time between the frames, basically. So what this main variable does is it's basically our root node. And in this case, it's the path follow 3D. Oh, and also while we're here, you want to uncheck loop. Because the loop property will make it restart at the beginning once it reaches the end, and that's not what we want. Anyways, so now that we know our main variable is our path follow 3D. We're gonna get our property called progress, and we're gonna add speed times delta onto it. And also the colon and the keyword or the data type is how you set a variable type or hint variable, and this will allow you to like choose any node basically within the editor, so it's pretty useful. And just a reminder, make sure you actually click this property and then double click on path follow 3D. And also progress, you can read up exactly what it does, but this will just make it move across the path depending on how high the progress number is. And we multiply it by delta to like smooth it out. And we also have a property called progress ratio. If it's at 1, that means it's at the end. If it's at 0, that means it's at the beginning. So basically, if we are at the end or we're past the end, because we're not going to be exactly on 1, because we're going to go slightly past it because we're adding on speed times delta. But anyways, we're going to delete the node. This is what queue_free does. It's basically a safe way of deleting the node at the end of the frame. Other than that, that's all you need for the enemy. Now we can go on to actually spawning in the enemies. This is also really simple. So you want to create a new node, the same steps as the path follow component. You're going to press right click, save branch as scene, and I created a folder called components in my maps folder, and I saved the queue scene into that. You're also going to want to add a timer node, and the timer node settings should look something like this. Auto start should be checked on. Wait time, it could be whatever you prefer, but the wait time will be the time between the enemy spawns. Okay, anyways, you want basically a reference to the scene, and we're preloading it because it's just faster that way, and it's less laggier. Like, it'll create less lag when we spawn in the enemies. We're also going to create a new variable or export variable for the path 3D. So make sure you click on the right node. Anyways, we're also going to connect a signal. So if you're new to Godot, signals, they automatically create a function within your script. You can create them by pressing node at the top when you click on a node, and you can select any of these. You can press connect, and then you choose a node with a script attached to it, and you press connect. Yeah, so basically each node will have a certain like requirement for the function or signal to be triggered. So once that is triggered, then it will basically call this function. And all we do here is we create a new variable called enemy, and it's basically just duplicating our scene and actually adding it to our game. That's what the instantiate does. And finally, we're gonna add path. We're gonna add our enemy as a child of our path node, because as we discussed before, our path follow 3D only works when set as a child of the path 3D node. Okay, anyways, yeah, that's basically it. And also, a little tip is you can click on like any of these kind of like axes to like go in that top down view or side view, and it makes it a lot easier to place the path points. And of course you can go to the x axis if you want to make it go up in the y direction, but for me I just kept it flat. Yeah, so that should be it, and when you run it you should get something like this. So it'll be 3 seconds before it spawns, and yeah, here it comes. So you can see after 3 seconds they spawn in. When they reach the end they disappear. Yeah, and that's basically it. So the next tutorial will be like a fairly short one. I just want to have the enemy health, and I want to add like the player's health. I don't know if we're gonna get to enemy health, but I want to keep the videos fairly short. But yeah, at the very least I want to have a health bar for the player, and when the enemies reach the end, they'll subtract a certain amount of health from that health bar. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, then please like, subscribe, and yeah, thanks for watching.